important to prepare yourself for the main event and have a proper nutrients in the morning. That's caffeine.
The mustard?
No.
The last 7-8 years you've played the main event, and you've had this exact breakfast.
Every year. We're 1 hour away from the main event. I have not showered yet. I have not really properly gone dressed, but I do pretty well under pressure. Oh, hi, YouTube viewer. What are you doing in the car?
I guess so.
This is my 7th time playing in the main. I only cashed once. And that was in 2019.
I've been playing all summer and I've never heard a bad beat story from anybody, and I'd really like to hear it.
Oh, you want to hear the bad beat story that caused me to quit poker for a while?
Sure.
Maybe later.
Is this your first main event?
It's my first main event.
Cool. And do you play poker?
Pick them up on the
Never
street.
played poker. This is my second main event.
Oh, okay.
Looking to extend my 100% cashing streaks.
Yeah, and if you don't cash, you're gonna complain about it to everyone, right?
Of course.
Welcome to the main event. I have ace queen of clubs on the button, and I raise to 2100 against this 600 open, and we see a flop. The flop comes ace king 6 with 2 spades, and I c-bet 1600. The turn is a 10 of clubs. He checks. I decide to check back because I believe this is a board that this deep I'm not really going to get 3 streets of value often. Senk has been playing pretty solid so far. Also don't think he's the type of player that is going to be calling me down with like a weak ace on 3 streets. So I prefer having a strong hand that checks back the turn and we can bluff catch a lot of rivers. Unfortunately, the river was the 8 of spades, which now actually completes a lot of the draws. If they didn't already improve, you know, he can have king 10, he can have ace 10, he can have queen jacks, and now all the flushes get there. He bets the river for 3,000, which was a bit too small compared to the pot size. The pot size is around 7,500. And it's one of the only reasons why I called, because I thought that he could still be betting an ace for value here. And I beat all ace jacks. I think those are all going to bet. So I have to call. He ends up showing king jack, which was a kind of a confusing hand to see because it looks like he was trying to turn it into a bluff, but it was too small of a size. And yeah, so we win a nice little pot to start. As I mentioned before, it's kind of set the tone because Aman is left. He was playing very aggressive and loose pre-flop, but was generally trying to avoid playing any pots against me, which made it a nice dynamic for me to have kind of an easier day one. Not a professional poker player. He owns a bunch of businesses. He actually owns properties in Costa Rica as well. And we checked in on each other every day to see how the tournament was going. And you know, not to spoil it, but we both were doing really well on multiple days, and we might have some footage of that.
First break, how's it going?
Well, we have a mix of a fun and boring table, a couple of chatty guys. We started by talking a lot, but it's been really boring. There's not much to do. I'm kind of actually getting a bit sleepy. Like I took a cold shower this morning, but it's not cold because Vegas water is fucking boiling all the time. Trying to like stay up and play some poker. There's still 8 hours left. Everything on my right looks like they're all recreational, putting chips around, splashing around. There's been some interesting pots, a couple of big bluffs, and like a couple players overplaying some hands, it seems. But I mean, I'm glad this is a really good table for day one, to be honest.
Here we have one of the first difficult and big pots that we play on day one. Jeremiah. For the main event, I was planning to bring my buddy Ricky. Ricky is my main helper when I was streaming online on Twitch. He's been through it all with me. He told me when to bluff and when to hero call. Unfortunately, I couldn't bring him because he's very huge and doesn't fit my luggage. So I asked my wife to bring him when she was coming to visit me right before the main event. I begged her, please bring Ricky. I really need him. I can't wait to bring a huge monkey on the table and do some silly stuff. Unfortunately, she did not bring him, but she brought his buddy, his cousin, Jeremiah. I really like that I can wrap Jeremiah around my neck. It could help me hide some of my neck tells, you know, when you have a very high heartbeat. But also he just looks super goofy and I look like an absolute psycho with him. At this point, I've managed to get my chips to around 90,000 just by winning a lot of small pots, kind of bullying some of the opponents that I thought were going to be too scared. I've been playing relatively loose and getting 3-bet often. So I look down at 6s under the gun and I raise to 900. Middle position, 3-bets to 2,700 and it comes back to me and I call. The flop comes 5-5-5, which basically is a pretty good board for me. One of the best boards without hitting a 6, really. So I have a full house. I check and he bets 1,600, which is 25% of the pot, and I call. The turn is a deuce, which is, I mean, kind of good, but not the best at the same time because I already know it's going to be a very difficult spot. Our opponent, which is a good Canadian online player, I believe, bets the turn for, I believe it was around 6,000, leaving himself with 18,000 behind. I have 6s, you know, on one of the best boards here. I still beat a lot of natural bluffs. Like he's gonna have a lot of hands that have 2 overs. Even ace king, ace queen are always gonna be betting here as a 2-barrel because they just are trying to put a lot of pressure on my pairs, and I need to call the turn. And then the river was the jack of diamonds, which is actually not a very good card for me because that hits a lot of his bluffs. So he can have king jack offsuit, king jack suited, jack 9 suited, jack 10 suited, queen jack suited, ace jack off. A lot of these hands now have a better full house. I ended up leveling myself here a bit because our opponent ends up going all in very quick on the river. And I think in this situation, usually if someone has a hand with a jack that was not a full house, you know, like king jack offsuit, they kind of take a bit of time before deciding what they're gonna do. But our opponent announced all in really quickly, which is basically polarized and means he can either have, you know, a very strong hand that has decided it's gonna go all in no matter what, or he has a bluffing hand that has also decided to go all in no matter what. And in this case, our opponent has been losing a lot of pots before. I had a feeling that he was getting really frustrated. It seems like he was running pretty bad and getting cooler in a lot of situations. And from experience, a lot of good players sometimes end up kind of like believing that they need to do these type of bluffs in order to get some chips. So I made the mistake of leveling myself into thinking he's going to be bluffing all his like ace 8 suited, ace 9 suited type hands that are all going to end up emptying the clip. I don't block any of his bluffs, which is really good. I'd rather be calling with 6s here than calling with a hand like 10s, because 10s blocks king 10 suited, ace 10. So in terms of a bluff catching combo, it's one of the better ones. But in reality, in the main event, people don't really go for a 3-bet 3-barrel bluff on day 1. So I end up calling, and he just shows us aces for like the haha, of course I had it. And I feel like an idiot. Now I'm down to 60k chips, back to starting stack, and I feel a bit defeated for making a wrong read, but you know, still a very long tournament. This shouldn't dictate the future of our decisions in any way. On our right were a bunch of recreationals that were playing very loose. They didn't like to fold, they're being very sticky. So in general, my strategy was not to really bloat too many pots out of position or in position with hands that don't do very well. So the middle position raises to 1,000. We get 2 callers, and I'm on the button with ace deuce of hearts, and I decide to just call. The blinds fold, so we are 4-way to the flop. The flop is 10-8 deuce with the 10 of hearts. It checks to the cutoff, who is our buddy at this point, Seng, who's been playing very, I would say, solid and a bit straightforward. Whenever he has a piece of the board, he puts in chips, and it doesn't matter what the piece of the board is. So in this case, on 10-8 deuce, he leads 3,000 into a pot of 4,800. I think his range would be hands that any pair, pretty much, like even pocket 5, 6s, he's trying to see where he's at type of range. He's also going to have, like, for sure, 2 pairs, sets, and like a lot of draws, maybe like queen jack suited, jack 9 suited, something like that. So he leads to 3,000, and the other 2 players in the pot, I was taking a look at them, did not seem very interested. So I decided to turn my hand to a bluff. I block bottom set, which is important. I can still improve to an ace here. I have a backdoor flush draw. I block some ace-10 offsuit, which is like most likely hand that he's going to continue. And we can put a lot of pressure because it's a multi-way pot, and I'm the most likely to have like 2 pairs and sets in this situation because my range favors that. So I decided to raise, which was pretty ballsy at this point because we said we're not going to play very big pots without having much, but I felt like this was a very good spot to go for a bluff against an opponent that has a very wide range. So I raised to 8,500, and our opponent ends up calling. Turn is the 9 of clubs. This is one of the worst cards that I could see because it actually completes a lot of his draws. It completes some straight draws and flush draws. He can have even pocket 9s in his range. He can have 2 pairs. So I actually have to check this back often because I don't have that many hands that raise the flop and very, really complete on this turn unless I had a semi-bluff with a club draw. But usually those just call in multi-way situations. So it's not a very good card for me. So I decide to check back. The river is the 9 of hearts, and our opponent checks again. This is very good for us because the way that our opponent was playing, he would never really trap the river. And now when I have ace deuce on this board, it's obvious that it's not a winning hand. I don't beat much. He has a lot of like queen 10, jack 10, weak 10x, possibly some 8x hands that I can definitely target and put a lot of pressure in on. And I obviously have sets in my range that play this way. I'm raising all my sets on the flop. I'm checking some of them on the turn because it's one of the worst turns. And then now on the river, I have a full house. So our bet size needs to make sense, and I need to go very polarized. I end up going for a very large bet. I believe it was around 1.5 pot size. It looks like I bet 27,500 into a pot of around 20,000. This makes it extremely difficult for him to make a loose call because he needs to find bluffs that I would have in this case, and I really don't have many. Ace deuce is one of the most natural ones, and I can technically still have some hands like all my boats of obviously that go the same way, so it's a very difficult spot for him. He takes a long time and ends up folding, and I'm very happy with the spot. In this hand, we are up against a recreational from Malta. This guy was playing pretty loose aggressive. I would say in general playing very solid, but I actually had a very good lifestyle on him. I looked down at pocket 8s in the cutoff and I just call. The flop becomes 5-3-3 rainbow, and he goes for a very large bet of 3,500, and I call. The turn was a deuce, if I believe, that does not put a flush draw, and he checks. I actually realized when he checked here that he had this kind of like disinterested in the pot check, which means he's very weak. Most likely he has 2 overcards, and I don't mind checking back here just in case he's trapping with a very strong hand. But it's also because from what I've seen, the way he plays is that he randomly goes for lines that don't make sense, and I want him to bluff river, so he just attacks weakness whenever he's presented with the opportunity. So I check back 8s on the turn, knowing that he's most likely going to be bluffing the river a lot on unimproved cards. And the river is a brick, a very irrelevant card. I believe it's another deuce. And then he goes for a 5,500 bet, and I call relatively quickly, and he shows king-queen offsuit, which is in line with exactly what I thought he would do. He's trying to target some of my ace highs to fold. To be honest, if I had an ace high in this case, I'm most likely going to call, given all the information and the reads that I had on the call.
Queen. Pocket 8.
I've been chipping up slowly. I've been kind of like winning a lot of small pots, sometimes big pots with a bluff, but in general, my image was pretty solid and people were not really trying to mess with me. And we are facing an Israeli player that was very nice. We talked to them a lot. And he's been losing a lot of big pots in very unlucky situation. He actually lost with aces twice in a spot he should never lose. And he raises under the gun to 1,500. I look down at pocket kings in the cutoff. I 3-bet the 4,500. And obviously against this type of player, I'm just going to get it in. He has around 60 big blinds to start. I think he's also pretty frustrated and is in an unhappy phase. So I think he's more likely to get in jacks, ace queen, and stuff like that. I've been very aggressive as well. So it goes back to him. He raises to 13,000, which is nearly 40% of his stack. And I was really not happy to see that. Usually when people 4-bet in a live big tournament, they have it. At least the size is kind of nice because they will do that type of size with queens and ace king. So I can't really let go of my kings. I push all in for 30,000 total effective. He instantly calls and I'm up against aces, unfortunately. But all we care about is making sure that we bounce back from it. We still have a good amount of chips and we can rebuild. Or you can just be a luck sack and smash the king on the flop. I was extremely lucky for that, of course. I feel really bad for the guy. This is the third time he loses with aces. It was just like an unavoidable spot. There was no way we can avoid the schooler. I bust him out and I'm at over 100,000 chips now, and I'm very confident on my image. Towards the end of the day, we have built up a decent amount of chips. We have around 120,000. My opponents have realized that I'm playing pretty aggressive. I've been bluffing a lot. Even though I haven't shown bluffs, there were situations where, you know, I was playing very polarized strategies on the river, betting very big, putting a lot of pressure on weak hands, and people eventually were folding, and they can kind of tell like I was probably bluffing. So that builds up into an image that I need to utilize when I make big hands. So I looked down at 8-6 of clubs in the big blind, and our opponent raised from middle position to 1,500 at 300, 600, and I call. The flop is Jack 6 deuce rainbow. I check, he checks. The turn is a 6 of diamonds, which gives me trips. At this point, I'm not really worried about a better 6 because he doesn't have many that would open from early position. So I put out a bet of 3,900, which is basically pot size. Our opponent calls on the turn, and then the river is a 9 of diamonds. And I go for another relatively big sizing, another polarized size, which is very important here because you need to keep saying the same story that you're saying before. I have a 6, I have a 6, I have a 6. And that's how you bluff as well, is if you have 5-4, 4-3, those type of hands, those are going to be your best bluffing candidates in this case. And I will definitely have those type of hands here. So I go for a very big bet on the river. I believe it's 8,700. And our opponent takes a very long time and ends up making a call. I don't know what he had, but if I had to guess from how long he took, it looks like he was going for a very wide hero call with ace high, which is probably not that bad against me, to be honest, because I'm definitely finding a lot of bluffs in these situations when people don't have many 6s in their range.
How many?
129, 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. You're so sick.
Thanks. It's been a wonderful day.
Oh man,
Hey, tell me about your day.
whoa!
Did you guys win or lose?
We're live.
Okay, put your hands on the wheel, take out your license and registration.
The cameraman, Mr. Tom, wants to get some cancer. So
I'm just vaping.
Vaping, yes, yes, the healthy man.
To start day 2, we're gonna play soccer.
Oh yeah, we have soccer in exactly 9 hours. And yeah, we're basically pretty excited for that, but I also really want to sleep. And yeah, I mean, you're delaying us.